Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September version of A Conversation With. Tonight's conversation is with our special guest, Richard Britt. We're going to introduce him here in just a few moments. But let me say welcome to everyone. For those that I don't know, my name is Todd Gober. This is my wife, Leslie. And we operate a ministry called Step by Step Ministry. And so as part of one of the things we do are these monthly webinars that we call A Conversation With. And it's a variety of topics from golf related topics to books, to relationships, to self-improvement, all different topics centered on providing information for you guys to grow and to learn and do all that kind of good stuff. Leslie is our main coach. She does a lot of counseling, a lot of one-on-one coaching. I help her a little bit, but she's our main one. Leslie, you want to introduce yourself and share anything about kind of good stuff going on with the ministry?
Yeah, as Todd said, I'm his wife, and I don't know if I do a lot of the counseling. I think we do a lot of it together, but yeah, I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm really glad Richard is here with us, and we got a lot of really cool stuff coming up with the ministry. With just God's beginning to make the mission a little clearer, and I'm excited to share that with you guys as the time comes. But yeah, we do all kinds of stuff from mentoring to seminars and all kinds of things. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. So let me minimize the slide there in advance so you guys can kind of see the screen. Hopefully you can kind of follow along. We'll talk through this. If you can't see it on your screen, don't worry about it. We'll talk through a couple of these bullet points. But if you are on your phone or on your computer and can read through this, feel free to follow along. So a couple of housekeeping things. You guys are doing a great job so far with your cameras and mics on mute. Thank you for that. We'll do some introductions here in just a moment. You guys can turn on your videos as you are introduced. But the rest of you, feel free to relax and sit back and keep your cameras off and your mics on mute. Remember, there is a chat feature, and as you guys have questions for Richard, please post those questions in the chat as we go, and we'll be sure and save some time at the end to take your questions and have a little Q&A with Richard there at the very end. I've listed a couple of announcements here, a few announcements about the ministry, and then a few announcements about our sister organization, which is called Step by Step Golf. I want to share a couple of things. First of all, about the ministry, if you can see the bullet points on here, I am excited to say that within the last month, one of our clients, but more importantly, one of our friends, he's a friend of the ministry, that is we've been in partnership with on the golf side for the past several years, has come to know the Lord. He made a personal decision to give his life to Jesus. That's happened within the past month or so, and happens to be a person that I meet with every Friday morning. It's one of the groups that we work with as part of Step by Step Ministry. Just an incredible testimony. I won't say his name here on the video, but hoping that he'll work with us and do maybe a video testimony with us and kind of tell that story. Just an amazing story about how God used golf to bring us together and to now bring him to a relationship with Jesus. We've had a book release. I should have it with me. I'll go get it here in just a moment. But our daughter, Peyton, our oldest daughter, Peyton, has released a book. And the great thing is she didn't even know she was going to release the book. Leslie, tell the story. I'm going to run grab the copy.
Okay. So when Peyton was in the third grade, I believe, she had to write a book for school. And as most of us parents do, or at least me, I'm not as organized as I should be. So Peyton just threw that little book in her closet. And as her grandmother was here helping us organize, one day she found the book and she was blown away that Peyton had the insight she did at 8 years old. And so she kept it when Peyton was 8, and Peyton's now 22. So that was 14 years ago. And just in the last year, my mother-in-law decided that she wanted to get it published. And I got to tell you, when I go back and read it now, I'm blown away that she was 8 years old and understood the things that she understood at that age. So it's just been released.
Here it is. Hopefully you guys can see it here. Jesus is the Real Power, and in parentheses, Not Magic, by Peyton Gober. Peyton's actually on the call with us tonight. And I think Peyton has a bunch of her buddies on the call with us tonight too. So I'm sure she's gonna get it. But hey, here it is. Author picture on the back. It is on Amazon, so so take a look at that, and I hope you guys will buy that and be blessed by the stories. We're proud of you, Peyton. Way to go. And
Yep.
Graham, my mom, Graham, thanks for helping us get it published. Leslie mentioned a new name, new logo. We're not ready to release that yet, but between now and the end of the year, we will be renaming the ministry. Lots of reasons why. It'll separate a little bit from the golf side of things, but Leslie and I have been working on the name and all kind of good stuff that'll go with rebranding and really clearly identifying who we are and what our mission is. So more to come on that. I mentioned also on here several new clients. We've had folks come to us for pre-marriage counseling. We have existing couples that are already married coming back to us. We've got young adults, we've got college kids coming to us, and it's one of the reasons why the topic of financial planning, and I'm sure Richard's got a better way of saying that, is important. It's a life skill, and it's something we want to talk about, and God has a plan for it, and that's one of the reasons why it was a great topic for tonight. One other note I want to make, and I'm going to ask Alyssa to go ahead and turn on her camera if she would. We have a special guest with us tonight. She is actually attending tonight as a participant, but in October, she will be our guest speaker. In fact, let me get the screen here where we can see Alyssa. There we go. And Alyssa, we can't share too much now. We got to save some of the good stuff. But for those on the camera, I am holding Alyssa's new book. It is a best-selling book. It went best-selling, Alyssa, in one day, I think, right? The first day?
Yeah, 24 hours. I woke up to a text from the girl who helped with the formatting at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was like, "You need to go on Amazon. It's a bestseller." So yes.
Wow,
That's awesome.
So those of you that are on camera and can see this, until heaven parts us, Alyssa Patterson. We have Alyssa on tonight. Alyssa will be our special guest speaker in October. Alyssa, can you give them a 20 or 30-second snippet of what they may hear about?
Sure. So I was married last June 5th of 2021. And unfortunately, 3 weeks after my wedding, my husband was in an accident and passed away. And I was 23 at the time. I'm 25 now. And I really just wanted to document Chandler and I's love story and all that God did before and leading up to our wedding. And even bigger than that, all that God did after he passed away, and I became a widow right after becoming a wife. So lots of hope in this last year, and have definitely drawn closer to the Lord in my grief. So excited to share it with y'all.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight, first and foremost. Thank you for sharing the book. I've read about 80 pages of the book so far, and it is unbelievably well written. Those of you on the call, and there'll be a whole lot of people listening to this recording after tonight too, just mark your calendars, be blessed, because as I put in the on our homepage on our website, if you have questions about God's goodness, or if you have questions about how can God let bad things happen to good people, and Alyssa, there's probably a long list of those kind of questions I know you cover in the book. This will be a session you guys do not want to miss. The registration is already available on our homepage, stepbystepministry.org. So if you go to stepbystepministry.org, you can register there for the October session. It is going to be amazing. Alyssa, we'll let you off the hook. Feel free to turn your camera off. Thanks again.
Thank y'all. Bye.
All right, one other quick announcement. I mentioned a golf announcement, the Legends Cup. I know we have some Legends Cup participants on the call. I'm wearing my shirt. I'm wearing my winning shirt, by the way. Old Waverly 2 weekends ago. That's right, the Nationals. The Nationals are the champions of the 2022 Legends Cup. So to my teammates that are on the call with us, what a great weekend it was. It is one of our 2 men's tournaments. So it's a men's retreat. And we do multi-day golf events for people of all ages, juniors, college. We have a couples tournament we do, and this is one of our 2 men's tournaments. So It was an amazing experience at Old Waverly Golf Club a couple of weekends ago, and had to wear my winning shirt. Proud to be on the winning team. Okay, enough funny business. Let's get down to why we're here tonight. And as usual, we're going to start in prayer. Would you like to pray for us?
Sure. Sure. Father God, we just thank you for this time together. I thank you for each one of these people that set aside time tonight to be with us. I pray that you would prepare our hearts for the message that Richard's going to bring tonight. I pray that you would speak to him and that we would learn more about your ways and just wisdom when it comes to money, Lord, because we know that in your word you talk more about money than just about anything. So we know that it is important to you, Lord. If it's important to you, then it should be important to us as well. So we just give you this time tonight. We ask that your spirit lead the conversation and that you would make us more Christ-like at the end than we were at the beginning. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, a couple of final bullet points here, and then we'll get down to business. Learning goals for tonight. I've got 2 listed, and for those that can't see the screen, I'll read those out for you. Number 1, just to introduce you to the resources available through Step-by-Step Ministry. As I mentioned earlier, we're really about life skills, teaching of life skills. And when you go to our website, you can see all kind of good stuff on that website, including these monthly webinars we do like tonight. So introducing you all to the resources we have available. But specifically for tonight, to provide God-centered financial wisdom, tools, and resources. And we are so thankful to have a great friend of the ministry with us. Now, before I told Richard to hold off on his camera here for a minute, because before I introduce Richard, I have something very special I want to show you guys. Richard is what we call a caddy daddy, meaning his daughter is a participant in our junior event, which takes place in February of every year. She is an elite junior player based here in Birmingham, Alabama. And the reason I wanted to tell the story was because earlier this year in February, the night before the tournament, now this is a 2-team tournament, 20 players versus 20 players. So everything's got to be just right. We had 2 players on one team withdraw from the tournament the night before. It threw everything into a frenzy. And so we had to choose a player. They were both female players. So we had to take a female player from one team and move them to the other team. Now, for those of you that don't know about this, these folks get into it. It's the Nationals versus the Americans. It's got a USA flair to it. They wear colors. They wear stickers. The girls wear the ribbons to go with their team colors. And I had to call one of the families on Friday night and ask if they would change teams. And based on the ages of what we needed to fill, Carmen Britt, Richard's daughter, fit that age group of one of the players that we needed to move over. So I want to show you a picture of Carmen. Here's a picture of Carmen standing behind the trophies. This was our media shot that we took at the opening ceremonies. And I wanted to give Carmen a shout out and say, Richard, what an incredible job you've done raising this young lady, because when I called you guys, you gave the exact response that we could only hope for. You were totally understanding. You did say Carmen had gotten her uniforms all ready to go and she was ready to be on the blue team. Now she's going to be on the red team. But I cannot thank you enough for the response that you gave and just the overall spirit that Carmen brought to the event. Looking forward to having you and Carmen back at the event next year. And with that, let me introduce Richard, our guest speaker for tonight. Richard, feel free to come on camera with us, and I'm gonna try to stop sharing my screen here.
All right, thank you, Todd. I got to tell you, I'm a little bit intimidated. Okay, so I mean, I've heard about this book being written and this book and this book. You know, I mean, I'm the only one here that hasn't written a book, right?
No.
I haven't. I haven't yet.
Thank
That's
you
pretty
for having
funny.
me.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for being a friend of the ministry. Like I mentioned earlier, feel free to jump in and kind of give some background to our audience as to what you do away from the golf course.
Sure, I appreciate it. Well, and you'll probably notice that you found a really nice young picture of me that not really where I am right now, but I just didn't have the heart to change it. So just to give everyone a little background, I grew up in Dothan, Alabama. I went to Stanford University for about a year and a half back in 1990, early 91. Desert Storm started. I joined the Marine Corps. So I served our country in the Marine Corps, received my degree in accounting from Troy University, worked at Merrill Lynch for 21 years as a financial advisor. I'm at Wells Fargo Advisors now. My team's been there for over 3 years. I'm a certified financial planner and chartered retirement planning counselor. As I told Todd, I'm not here representing my company. I'm here just trying to help in any way that I can, as if we were, in a Sunday school classroom and we're just sharing ideas or sitting around a campfire. So that's my approach here. And I just hope that there's something that I can provide that can be of value to everyone on the call. And I know everyone's circumstances are a little bit different, but what we're going to talk about, I think, can help, everyone in some ways. Some will be focused more, toward, one group, maybe retirees, and others, toward people that are just starting out that have time, to prepare. So, and Todd, however I.
Yeah. That's perfect. I'm not sure. There we go. I don't know if we froze or you froze, or can you see us okay?
Yeah, I see you. I don't know who froze.
Okay. All right. We're getting an unstable internet connection, so maybe it was on our end, but great intro. And let me reiterate what you said about being a friend of the ministry. For all of the folks watching this, please relax. This is an informal topic. Be invited to share questions. That's what Richard wants it to be, is just a bunch of friends kind of sitting around, and we want to reiterate that. Richard, as we were talking about a few days ago, kind of planning for this, one of the things that we had talked about was kind of starting with God's plan. And we know God does have a plan, and God has a purpose for how we spend his money. It's his anyway. He lends it to us. He provides it to us to be stewards of what is already his. Can you just kind of start off talking about God's plan a little bit and kind of how you view that?
Sure. When you asked me the other day, one of the first things that came to mind, obviously, is that we need to be prudent, with our money, and it's God's money, and we need to, do things to help others. But the parable that came to mind was the parable of the talents. The talents were the currency of the time, so the money, and the owner that was going away for some period of time left 3 of his servants, with the talents. He left one with 5, one with 2, and one with just 1. And so according to their abilities, as to what he felt like their abilities were, when he came back, the one that had 5 talents had invested it, had tried to grow it, and he doubled it. The one with 2 talents also doubled his, but the one with 1 talent had buried it in the ground and hid it so that he would know where it was when the owner came back. And so when the owner came back and he asked for everyone to show what they had, the ones that had 5 and 2, he was very pleased with. You were prudent. You did a good job. You were a good steward of my money. And the one with 1 buried it. He was very, very, frustrated and unhappy with them. And he said, take the 1 talent from him and give it to the one who has 5. And so, the owner wanted people to take care. Wanted the servants to take care of the money and to be prudent. And so that's what I think that we should do. We should, we obviously need money to survive. We need money to not put ourselves in a position where we're in need, but we also need to grow it, to invest it properly when the time is right, use it to help others. That's what I view.
Awesome. And one of the things I love, we actually talked about this together earlier today. One of the topics our ministry, Leslie and I, talk a lot about, whether it's money or whether it's relationships, even career, whatever the topic may be, it starts with the condition of the heart. I've shared stories in the book that I wrote about golf. I told a lot of stories about myself and how I was not a very good caddy daddy. And Peyton's on the call, and she can talk about some of my anger that came out. And one of the things I say in there is it's my anger is not a mouth problem, it's a heart problem. And that anger that came out was a result of what was in my heart. And I think we would say the same thing about money. The way in which we use the money or spend the money, again, which has been entrusted to us from someone else, really is a reflection of our heart condition. And that's been a prayer point for us, for all of those listening tonight. You're going to get some great tips from Richard. You're going to get a lot of tools and a lot of thoughts that challenge your thinking. More than anything, what Les and I pray for, those of you listening in on this call, is that you're challenged in your heart to think about, hey, it's God's money. Did I even think about that to begin with? And maybe that is a first step of realizing it's not mine. And then the tools and things that Richard shares with us tonight can kind of layer on top of that. Richard, the target audience of our ministry, as it's turning out, is really a college age and young adults is a really target age for us in terms of the things we're teaching. Can you talk a little bit about some of the common mistakes you see young people make as they're kind of getting started out, and things that may kind of get them off on the wrong foot or off on the wrong direction, and you just kind of cringe going, I wish they knew this. What do you see frequently?
Well, I would say first, you got to have a plan. And it seems like it's so far away, or retirement is so far away. I worry about that when I get there. And, if young people were to recognize that they're the power of compounding, I think that's a critical note for people to understand, is that if you start saving now, the ability for it to compound over time is tremendous. Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compounded interest. And so if you wait too late, that money can't compound for you. And I'll give you an example. So let's say someone were able to save, and I'm just trying to use a round number here, $1,000 a month. I know it's a lot of money, but let's say someone can save $1,000 a month in 10 years. If they get 7% rate of return, just throwing out a number, it'll grow to $173,000. Okay, but after 20 years, it's 500,000. I actually wrote this note down. I'm going to refer to my note just to make sure I get my numbers right. So 520,000. Okay, that's after 20 years. Okay, 30 years, it's 1.2 million. Okay, so you're saving the same amount each month. Okay, but what's happening is that money that you have from 20 to 30, you're at 520,000. That money basically doubles. All right, and then you're just adding the other same $173,000, for the savings that's grown. So in 40 years, it's 2.6 million. The point is the power of compounding and starting early. Even if you're starting with just a small amount, it creates a good habit, and it creates, it's self-motivating. I don't know how many people out there are, exercise or work out. I feel like those people that smoke say, oh yeah, I can quit smoking anytime. I've done it, dozens of times. Well, you haven't really quit, right? I mean, but once you work out, once you exercise, okay, you realize, and that's kind of what I was comparing it to, is like, oh yeah, I work out. Well, I've been through roller coasters, right? I've been through times where I've exercised really hard and times where I've fallen off the wagon basically and haven't worked out very well. But when you get into it and you start seeing that progress, it's motivating. You want to do more. And so I'd say if you start early and you start saving, you start investing, and you're seeing it work, and you're seeing it build up, it does encourage you to make you want to build more. We talk about hope, and that gives you hope, seeing that continue to improve. So have a plan would be the first thing, that I would say.
That's fantastic. And I wrote down power of compounding as well. So especially for you young folks out there, you can't replace that time. And so have a plan early, start the compounding process early. Exponentially speaking, those numbers add up and multiply up far, far, far faster than you ever would imagine. Now, Richard, that kind of leads into another question, which is, what if you don't? What if, for those of us that have made mistakes and have kind of gotten, in a bad situation, or maybe have debt piled up, or things feel, oh my gosh, well, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm on this webinar and here's this guy talking about this, but I can't really do that. I'm under too much, mound of debt, or I've got too many bills I've got to pay. How would you encourage people to kind of get started?
Sure. If you're servicing debt, it can feel like a mountain that's hard to get out from underneath. So, what I would say is that, again, have a plan. Have a plan for what you're going to accomplish to get out of that. If you have a certain amount of money that you feel like you can allot each month, set a plan for how long it's going to take, and then don't try your best not to add to it. The other thing that's really more in my field of expertise is talking about retirement plans. Okay, so if you have, I've seen many people that get in situations like that, and they have saved up in an IRA or in a 401k, and even though they're not 59 and a half, which is the year you can pull it out without a penalty, they'll pull money out, pay the taxes, pay the penalty, so they can pay down the debt. And what I would say is that's a bad move, in my opinion. Everyone's situation is different. Okay, so every situation has to be evaluated in its own. But generally, you don't want to pull that money out and pay a penalty on it if you can avoid it. A couple of reasons. One, if you are ultimately, go through serious financial trouble and someone files bankruptcy, the money that's in retirement plans is protected. It's very much protected. So 401ks, for example, are protected by an organization or in the tax codes. It's ERISA is the acronym. And so that protects against creditors being able to go after that money. IRAs have similar protections. It's not under ERISA, but there are other similar protections that IRAs have as well. It's hard for creditors to be able to access that money. So for that, just make sure that you avoid that mistake of digging into that. Figure out, work on a plan to try and carve out and set money aside to work that debt off. You can do an amortization schedule. I can help someone do an amortization schedule on how long it would take and how much they would need to pay at a given interest rate as to what, how long it would take for them to pay it off. And so that's the plan that they should have to do that. One other thing, since I'm talking about 401ks, that I would add, if your employer is matching a 401k, if you're fortunate to be in a plan that has a 401k match, then make sure that you're putting in at least what the company's matching. That's free money to you. Whatever you put in, they're matching. So that can help build up that savings for you, so that when you do get out of that debt situation, you're able to to have more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, let me kind of pose a rhetorical question to the audience, especially those of you young folks that are out there. And then, Richard, you can jump on this. We talked about life insurance and some of the other tools and things that you would recommend people plan for. But for those people out there, here's the question I want you to wrestle with. Who's going to pay your bills in the event that you can't work? Or who's going to pay your bills after you retire? Do you want there to be a day when you don't have to report to a job somewhere, but you've got enough money put to the side to where you can still live your daily life and your normal life as a result of the fact that you planned ahead and you put money aside? And I want to reiterate something that Richard said that was so powerful. I want to make sure the audience catches this. Retirement will be here before you know it. Those of you on the call are looking at empty nesters here, and one, maybe both of our kids are on this call, and we would both tell you that we can remember when those two little girls were born like yesterday, and all of a sudden here they are, they're gone. I've got gray hair. I don't know how that happened. But I'm a heck of a lot closer to retirement than I ever thought I would be. And everything just like in a snap, it's here. And so I want to reiterate Richard's point about how fast it comes and how important it is to have money ready for that when it does. And that goes back to what he says about having a plan. Richard, you mentioned life insurance the other day and how important that is in the event that, you know, something were to happen, to have that money so that bills could be paid. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Sure.
Yep.
I mean, that's in the area of one of the other common mistakes we talked about, and that's managing your risk, making sure that you're not taking on more risk, you know, than necessary from an investment perspective. But then from this perspective, with your family, if something were to happen to you and you didn't have the income coming in, would they be able to survive? And I don't know if everyone else gets the feedback. I can tell when you mute yours, Todd, that the feedback stops. So if you got if you pass away, okay, and you don't have protection, is your family going to have to move out of the house? Is your family going to have to, or your spouse have to take on an extra job, or what lifestyle changes are they going to have to make? And so term insurance is really the most efficient, the cheapest way to accomplish that. There are other types of insurance that have their purpose and their place, but to accomplish this for replacement of income, term insurance is very cost effective. And so it's like I like to watch sometimes that show on the Weather Channel, SOS, How to Survive, right? And so you've got these people that they go out in the desert and their car breaks down or gets stuck in the mud, and then they're walking for days and nobody even knows they're there. It's like, here's how you could survive this. I'm like, you know what? Here's how you survive it. You don't get in that situation, right? I mean, now I know there are some things that can happen, but putting yourself in that situation, such as not having insurance, can your family survive? SOS, could your family survive? Well, they might not be able to survive in the lifestyle that you have. So, having that insurance to help protect them. And so that's a major factor. Since we're talking about managing risk, when it comes to your investments, a lot of people like to have some very, aggressive investments, and that's fine if it's right for you and if you can handle that risk, but make sure that you can handle that risk. Manage the risk that you can handle so that it doesn't put you in a bad situation. Avoid taking on the things that can make you alter your goals. We talked about have a plan and have goals. Try to avoid doing things that can disrupt the goals. Avoid the pitfalls that can be there. And so I could expand on that, but I'll pause for now.
Sure, and sorry about the feedback. We were not hearing it on our end, but we'll definitely mute in between. So hopefully this is okay. I want to circle back to a previous question, and then we'll start to we've had a couple of questions from the audience come in as well. I want to circle back to the question about the tools and having a plan, and I want to see if you can maybe drill down a little more on that. I'm thinking of things like, what should young people know about credit cards? Or when you say have a plan, are you talking about like a written plan? Are you talking about a computer program? Are you talking about a piece of paper and a pen? But if you could say have a plan and kind of convert that into 2 or 3 sort of actionable items what sort of things could you encourage our audience to think about?
Sure. I think that for, starters is a budget, right? I mean, so, you've heard pay yourself, make sure that you're paying yourself. And one of the easiest ways to pay yourself first is in a company retirement plan. So if they have a 401k, make sure that you're contributing to that. Just make that an immovable object in your budget. Really be committed to that, because it will pay off over time. It will build up over time. So as you get to retirement, having a plan there versus having a plan starting out is maybe a little different. But it's just understanding what I touched on earlier about the power of compounding. And if you want to have a lifestyle that can afford you to live on, $6,000 a month in today's dollars, in retirement, or $10,000 or 12, whatever your goals are that you want to be able to spend in retirement, work your way backwards, right? I mean, figure out what you need to do in order to get there, and understanding that inflation is a factor, build that in. Because I say in today's dollars, Todd, it's like, we talk oftentimes, we're very involved with golf. You don't necessarily plan, how you're going to approach the hole from the tee box. You work your way back. Okay. So you look at the green, where the pin's position, where you want to try and hit, what's your target. And so it's the same way with financial goals. Work your way back. I want to have X number of dollars, or be able to live on X number of dollars at a certain point in time. Or it could be, I want to have enough money for a down payment for a home. I want to set aside money and save money for a home. So, what is a realistic goal that you want to achieve, and putting in place on paper, what you want to do what you're going to do in order to reach that goal. Because it's a simple math game, really. I mean, there are variables, if you're invested in the markets or whatever, there's variables. But if you have something that you need in the next several years, it's probably better to not have it reliant on the market. You need to give the equity markets, time to go through the cycles. So, if I need to set aside $500 a month, for a certain period of time, or $1,000 a month, figure out what that plan is to help you get to that goal.
Gotcha. All right, we got a couple of questions come in. One on the chat, one came in on the chat, and then I've got one on my paper here that came in. And let me encourage the audience too. You guys continue to add questions to the chat. This is your time. This is a free webinar. Other than the donations you guys are going to make, the step-by-step ministry, right? Wink, wink. Donations. We'll talk about that at the end. But seriously, it's your time with a financial expert here and friend of the ministry. Please drop in your questions to the chat. We've got one in the chat, Richard, and I'm going to read this one here first. Investments. I want to invest. Where do I start? I think the person is basically saying, you hear radio ads, you hear things on TV. Where in the world do you go? How do you know who to trust? Where would a person get started with investing that's never done it before?
Well, so as I mentioned before, the best place in the first place, if you have a company retirement plan, is to put it there. All right. So there's many reasons why you should do that. That being said, if you either want to invest beyond that, or separate, or don't want it tied up until you're 59 and a half, or for whatever reason, invest, find, something that is cost effective. And I would recommend building out, an investment in a broader index without taking on too much individual stock risk, unless you can really do your research and understand what you're investing in and understanding the risk. But a broader index, type approach, and have a dollar cost averaging, mentality. And what that means is that you're adding a little bit every month, or every 2 weeks, or however you're structuring it. Because what happens is, you invest and say the market goes down, you're like, oh my goodness, the market went down. Well, okay, that's not such a bad thing, because now I can buy more shares at a lower price. And if you have a long-term belief and feeling that the market's going to do well over time, and the reason that the markets will likely do well over time is because companies are continuing to earn more money year over year. You can pick, the companies that you see when you're driving down the road that are publicly traded. And I mean, those companies, those big companies, those big large cap companies are going to, continue in general to grow their earnings. And that's what ultimately moves the markets over the long term. Short term, markets are driven by sentiment, very much driven by, technicals of the charts and certain things like that. But over the long term, I'm a firm believer that the markets, move based on the earnings of companies. The value of a stock is made up of two things. One, what are the company's earnings, and what is an investor willing to pay for those earnings? And so that second part can be the frustrating part. I can forecast and make pretty good estimates on what, XYZ company is going to earn, but how much are investors willing to pay? If you have a company that is going to earn $5 a share next year, and investors are willing to pay, 15 or 16, 16 or 17 times earnings, which is a historical, then, that's great. But sometimes market runs up, sentiment on the shorter term, and investors will pay more. But there's no guarantee that they're going to be willing to pay that much for those earnings. And that's the part that can fluctuate. But that's why earnings growth over time, that's what I think ultimately moves it over the long term. Short term, it can be very much moved on sentiment and how much an investor is willing to pay for those earnings.
Gotcha. Good stuff. All right, we've had several more questions come in. I'm going to open the chat here, so we will go to the top of the list. Question for Richard: any helpful budgeting financial tracking apps? Oh, by the way, this reminds me, college students on the call, your banking app is not considered planning. When Richard talks about planning tools, your banking app is not one of them. I'm going to call out my daughter Peyton, just because she's related to me. I guess I feel I can do that. We've had some conversations lately about converting your plan into like an Excel spreadsheet or something, to where you're using your banking app, but also a planner or a tracker, so that you can actively do the budgeting part. So for those of you young folks that are locked into your apps are good, but just remember, your banking app itself is not the tracker or the planner, I think, necessarily that Richard's talking about. This question really gets into it, though. I love this question. So any helpful budgeting financial tracking apps? She says, I have tried Mint, but you have to pay a premium to utilize all the features. Seems counterintuitive to pay for something like that. Richard, any tips on any digital apps or digital resources?
That's a great question. It's not I don't deal with a lot of that sort of item, but I do know that a lot of financial companies, have budgeting tools within their banking system. Like I said, I'm not here to try and give a plug on for any specific bank, but I know that I have seen with certain bank apps, and you can maybe talk to or look into some of the major banks and determine and find out if they have budgeting apps or budgeting tools within their website. So a lot of times you'll find that within the company, so you can do that. And again, just to keep it as simple as you can, pay yourself. Don't run up credit card debt as much as possible. And as long as you're paying yourself and you're doing that and you run the numbers, then you can spend, what's left over. I mean, you want to try to make sure that you're being prudent, you're being smart with how you spend your money. But as long as you're saving and not running up debt, then it's okay if you spend, what you have. I mean, that's a simple way to look at it. And so for me personally, I use a spreadsheet, right? And it's just I'm a spreadsheet nut. If someone needs help with a spreadsheet, let me know, because I can probably build one for you. But so you figure out, what your bills are every month, see how much you're actually spending, and you just know that, you've got that amount to spend. It's discipline, right? I mean, discipline is really the key. And it's very hard. It's not something easy, but pay yourself, save, and then build out, your own budget. But there are budgeting, tools on major bank websites.
Yeah.
Check with me one-on-one. I'll be happy to share one-on-one for that. Just, Todd, let me know, and I'll be happy to reach out.
Yeah, sure will. And the other two, I love these next two questions as well. They also may be a little bit outside, Richard, of your realm, but we'll try them anyway. The next one says, what do you think of reverse mortgage for people who have paid off their home? Any thoughts or financial wisdom that kind of goes with that?
I think there's a place for that, for reverse mortgages. It depends on everyone's situation. I think that needs to be somewhat of a, the last thing that you do. I've not assisted anyone with a reverse mortgage. I don't know the details of that, so I can't, necessarily condone it or not. But from what I do know, I don't think it's such a bad thing. If it's a last resort for you, versus, your other option would be selling your house and finding somewhere else to live and live off of that. So, it's not something that I've dealt with a lot, but I don't think they're a terrible thing.
Yeah, I know very little about it, but what I think I hear you saying, and it kind of goes back to the heart thing we were talking about earlier. If reverse mortgage, I would guess, is either to help generate income or help generate revenue, cash flow maybe, or to help, pay debt or do whatever the case may be. So to your point, I think it's more a matter of asking the question, why? What are we doing this for? And kind of making a prudent decision if that thing is worth it, and what's the vehicle to get us there with, because having equity in your home is a great thing, and having the peace of mind of having that. I like how you put that kind of as a last resort.
Well, and what they're doing is they're creating a income stream on that. They're basically doing what we call annuitizing, the equity in your home. And so they have done an analysis to determine their risks of, and again, I am not an expert in this area, but my understanding of how it must work and what my perspective is that, they look at your life expectancy and how long you're expected to live. And they're going to give you a certain payment that will, give you, that will dig into the equity of that home. And with that, they're charging an interest on that. Okay. And so they know that interest, that basically a negative balance is building up that is owed. Okay. It's not like you're just it's not like they say, okay, you got $200,000 of equity in your home and you're going to put it in a mason jar and you're just going to pluck that out until 200,000 is gone. It's not exactly like that, because they're charging interest on that. And so as you are pulling 200,000 out, you might be pulling $250,000 out. Okay. And so that when you pass away and your home is worth 400,000, well, instead of having, 200,000, your beneficiaries have 150,000. Okay. So I would just say you need to look at the fine print and find out what the true cost is, what that cost is, and is there a better way? And so if a client came to me and said, hey, I've got this reverse mortgage. And if anyone on the call is in a situation like that, please reach out to me. I'll feel more free to talk, details one-on-one about things, but we'll take a look at it and we'll see what they're charging you and what the cost is. And if that is the best way and the most efficient way for you to use that, to access that money. So that's my thought on that.
Perfect. Thank you for adding that in. That's great. All right, one more question so far on the chat. I know we're a few minutes over, everybody, but thankful for your questions. And when the audience is engaged, we don't mind going a few minutes over. So thank you, guys. Last question, at least for now. How would you advise someone in their 20s with little to zero debt to divide up their investment portfolio between high risk, high return and low risk, low return index funds? What is the balance between the two, if any?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you. I would say, what is the time horizon for the money? And so if it's long term, if you say, okay, I understand the power of compounding and I want this to be for the long term, I would make sure that you have a balanced, diversified portfolio of ETFs. And when you talk about aggressive versus conservative, it's hard to talk in those general senses because you could have like some double, triple, multiple, on an ETF, a sector or something like that. That's extremely risky versus something that's very, very conservative that's in a fixed income ETF. So you got a wide range there. Again, I would say focus on the broader markets. If you want to be more conservative, have it in a value type, dividend type structure, but it's going to be invested for growth, for a purpose of long-term growth. If you have a long time horizon, you can deal with the ups and downs even more of the market, then put some into growth. A growth portfolio that has your access to the Amazons and the Googles and the more growth oriented companies out there. So it's okay for either one. Everyone has their own risk tolerance and what they can deal with. But what I would say is for a young person, if you want it to be for retirement, put it in there, dollar cost average, keep putting money in and let it go and forget about it. A common mistake that people make is they get so caught up in the here and now. The markets are going through, the cycle. And so I talk about the, long term with my clients and not get caught up on the short term. And the short term is not necessarily 1 day or 1 month. It's 1 year or more, because you have to go through that cycle. I'm very familiar with a study that put out that, if you invest for 1 day, you've got like a 46% chance of having a positive result. If you pick one random day in the market, okay? So it's a 50-50, it's a coin toss. As you go out to a month, and I don't know the figures off the exact top of my head, but if you go out a month, then your odds are more like 53%, okay? You go out a year and it's like 62%. You go out 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. When you go out to 10 years, it's like a 95% likelihood of success, okay? So it's not timing the market that matters. It's time in the market. Ride through those waves. And you talk about short term, the 1987 crash, Black Monday, people are familiar with that. They've probably heard of it. Terrible, terrible time. What most people don't realize is that 1987, the market was actually flat for the year. Think about, 87 was terrible. If you had gotten in a boat and sailed around the world for a year and said, I'm just going to, put my phones away, I'm not going to look at statements, you come back and your balance is the exact same pretty much as when you left, you're like, man, what a boring year. And everybody's walking around like they stuck their finger in an electrical socket or something. It's just, so they get caught up in the short term. When you have a long-term focus and you realize that my plan is to use this money 10, 15, 20 years down the road, it can go through those cycles. Let it go through those cycles, and don't get too caught up and make poor decisions, because fear and greed move the market. And it's just a natural sense. We all get fearful and so, oh man, should I just get out and wait for this stuff to settle down? Well, by the time it's settled down, the market's already back higher oftentimes. On the other side, the greed factors, you see everyone may, oh, this is making money, and this is, hear about these people making money. I got to get in. It's called fear of missing out. And so, that is something that is very dangerous too, because you wind up throwing money that you didn't really probably need to be investing, or you get in at the wrong time. It reminds me of, and I'll just share this with you real quick. Charlie Merrill once said in his letter to investors in 1911, they didn't have email and all the ways of communication like we do now. So he put an article in the letter to Mr. Average Investor. And he said, Mr. Average Investor hears about his next door neighbor making blank in the market. And he hears about, he reads in the newspaper about bumper crops and shortage in freight cars, which at the time meant really good economy. Things are going great. And it says, even the snug sum of savings in his bank account points an accusing finger at him, saying, put me to work. Let me show you I too can grow like Jack's beanstalk. And so what does Mr. Average Investor does? He scrapes every bit of money he can. He throws it in the market. That was the 1911 version. He was describing fear of missing out, okay, before it became a term. That's what that was. But he goes on to say, when the inevitable happens and the pendulum swings the other way, and demagogues stand on the graves of great dead industries and boast of the multitudes of their bloody deeds, it's fearful that Mr. Average Investor will once again follow the crowd and sell when everyone else is selling. And so it goes on, and I won't go on in that letter, but it just talks about the emotional psychology. And it all goes back to what we said, have a plan, all right? Yogi Berra once said, if you don't know where you're going, you won't know when you get there, right? I mean, how simple is that? I got plenty of yogisms, but that's one of my favorite. But you got to know where you're going. What is your target? What are you trying to accomplish? So for that 20-year-old, that young investor, know that you want to have $1 million or 500,000 or whatever your goal is. Back into it. I can help someone do a time value money calculation like that. I mean, just reach out to me, let me know. I'll be happy to do it for you. How much you need to save, assumed interest rate, and what you'll have down the road. So that's
fantastic.
That's what I would say.
That's fantastic. Richard, you have been an answer to a prayer. I mean that sincerely. Leslie and I have been thinking about this topic for quite a few months now. Didn't know where to turn. You and I had lunch a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago now, and that's when this idea kind of came to fruition. So sincerely, thank you for your time and your expertise tonight. Let me reiterate to the audience that Richard means what he says. He's a friend to the ministry. He is not here advertising his company. He's just here helping serve the ministry. So if you've got any follow-up questions for him afterwards, he would love to take those just as a friend of the ministry. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for submitting your questions. Don't forget the October version with Alyssa Patterson. She'll be on with us. I did mention jokingly earlier about donations. We do this free of charge as a service and hopefully as a help to you guys, but we do operate a nonprofit ministry and we appreciate donations, step-by-step ministry. And Richard, you've donated your time tonight. We can't tell you how much we appreciate that. So for the rest of you, stepbystepministry.org, you'll see the donate button there. And feel free to drop Richard a note afterwards, express your appreciation to him, and hope to see you guys again on a future webinar. Richard, thanks again very much.
Thank you, Todd.
You got it. Thanks, guys.